Notice is hereby given that a work session of the Salem-Keizer School Board, District 24J of Marion County, Salem, Oregon, is called for Thursday, January 9th at 6 p.m. in Room 2 at the Support Services Building at 2575 Commercial Street, Southeast Salem, Oregon. The meeting is called for the purposes of our superintendent search. I see that all members of the board are present, and I am going to, do you have anything you need to add, Paula?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Ray and his associates to walk us through and discuss the issues for tonight. Welcome.
Well, thank you. We're very pleased to be here, and we appreciate the fact that the board has chosen our firm to work again on superintendent search. So I thank you for that. And tonight our agenda, and I'm going to pass out the topics for discussion. I don't know if you have that or not. Oh, right there. Okay. Well,
You don't have to do anything, just talking.
all right. Okay. Normally I don't have this problem. Anyway.
Recording.
Yeah.
Recording.
Thanks, Chris. What we're going to do tonight is to establish a timeline, and that's going to drive this process. And so hopefully when we get done, we'll have the timeline, who's going to be involved in the process, everyone's going to understand the role, and we'll get the advertisement done, and then we'll talk a little bit about the salary, and we'll start the process itself. We've got a couple timelines I want to share with you, and those timelines I'm going to pass out to you. One's shorter than the other. The one mirrors the RFP that we had, which is a little more on a fast track. The other one is a little longer timeline. And I'm going to give you a recommendation on it, but I think that the board should take a look at it. Once we work, there's an option A and there's an option B, and I'll point out the differences when you get option B here coming out, to you. And let's not worry so much about the dates right now. That's, it's more or less, I'm going to talk to you about the process.
But I was thinking.
Yeah. I want to get,
Okay,
that's
option.
not B,
Trying to figure that out.
A and B.
Option A. And option B. Okay. One of the things I know that's right on both of these is today's date and time. Okay, that I do know is correct, and so we're in good shape there. Option A is the shorter timeline, which it corresponds more with the RFP, and you can see I highlighted some things in yellow, but on stages, the stages of the process is on the left-hand side of the pages. So I'm looking at option A. You got stage 1, and then you have stage 2, and then you look at stage 2. February 17th would be that deadline. Everybody see that? Okay. And then just to go down through the process of option A, and the highlighted yellow under stage 3 would be February 25th. That would be sharing the information with the board regarding the candidates and finalizing interview questions. All right? And then we would be interviewing the first week of March, and then the second week there we would be doing our second round of interviews, the finalists basically, and that's what. So the bottom line is we would be wrapped up somewhere in the middle of March, give or take a few dates. And so when you look at option B, The difference is that in option B is that you would go down to those same deadline dates in stage 3. The deadline date there would be March 12th. And the reason why that is that if we went out and of course we've interviewed all the board members, we would be going out and talking to various stakeholder groups. Now, I've looked at the information that the board has put together. I know that you've gathered some qualities regarding some of the stakeholders that you've looked at, and I've looked at that, and quite frankly, it looks pretty good. It looks, something very similar that we would be doing anyway in those meetings that you've already done. So the question really comes then, do you want us to go out and meet with the stakeholders, or do you want us to be on the shorter timeline and use the information that you've already put together? Now, I will tell you that if you look at the option B, we would be bringing you those candidates on March 27th versus February 25th, about roughly a month. And then then obviously that trickles down where you'd be looking at the week of the 31st and then of having your last interviews, and then the second round would be the 1st of April.
Gary, can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
So looking at these two calendars, you've got about, it's 3 weeks one way or the other. And while that doesn't seem like a lot, you're our expert on this. There is like a superintendent search season coming up for the next school year.
And we call it the hunting season.
Well, we got a tag.
Yeah.
So,
You're licensed.
Yeah.
so I guess my question would be, if we're looking for, a pretty highly qualified candidate, and we're, as you've told us in our previous meetings when we interviewed, we're a pretty highly desirable district to come to size-wise. We sit at the Capitol, a variety of things.
Right.
Does it hurt us to go to option B? Does it limit the pool of candidates? Does it eliminate what you would believe to be a pool of a better pool that we could see if we're doing a quicker turnaround? Because the board's put in a lot of time and effort into our criteria and meeting with our stakeholder groups. That's not to say we don't want our candidates to meet with those folks.
Oh, sure.
But are we missing something by going an extended calendar?
Well, I think that that if you go with option A versus option B, that I think you'll get. Let me back up. On option A, I think that it allows you that if we're not happy with the pool, it allows us to throw that net out again and go fishing again. Whereas option B puts us quite a ways down the road. And that's not to say, I do searches in May and June and so forth. I'm not saying that's the ideal time. I think that it will, going to option B will put some limits on us that we don't probably need. I've looked at your criteria, and I think you've done a lot of that homework, and I think it's best for us to look at not maybe necessarily these specific dates, but I would go with a shorter time, a more aggressive timeline. I think that there'll be a greater pool of candidates, for you to take a look at by going with option A versus option B. Yes, Rick?
Yeah, you just hit on what I was thinking about. If we go with A, we're going to be ahead of some people.
Yes.
So there'll still be some people available, is the bottom line. So the quicker turnaround we can do on this, I think the better off we'll be. Now, there's usually a big administrators conference in February. How does that fit into this schedule? Because that happens to be where you contacted the last superintendent we hired, or at least you got her application there or something from what I remember. But it's usually in late February.
Yeah,
that
that is the AASA convention, which I will be speaking at, which I will also be hosting a meeting room for potential candidates for our job.
How does that date fit here as far as getting them, anybody from there into your pool of candidates?
Yeah, that convention happens to be, I don't
I think
happen
it's
to
the
have
last
it right.
week of February.
That's what I was
the
thinking.
Second week of February?
I happen to have it, just
I
let
think
me,
it's the 19th or something.
Okay.
you know, it's kind of crazy, I actually am speaking there, and I don't have the date there, but I happen to have it right here with me that I can look at, and we could jiggle this timeline a little bit around.
Well, that's why I was asking, because I remember that was probably the last major resource spot you had for filling
Right.
out a pool.
Yeah, and that conference is the 21st
21st, I said 19th.
February through the 24th.
Yeah.
So we'll be at that conference, and the deadline date for us is on the February 17th. And what we could do without hurting us another week or something in there, we could back that date into it.
That's desirable to me.
It's probably not a bad idea to do
Okay.
that.
Would that back the whole thing up another week, or would it?
Probably about another week, yeah. It would back it up another week. What that conference does, some of the candidates can go right online there with us and fill out their application. And most of them have a resume, ready to go. As far as their references, I encourage them, to get those references in, but by and large, no one's gonna give me a bad reference anyway. I'm looking for their application, their letter of interest, and their resume, and that's kind of really what I'm looking for. So we certainly can, do that, and what that would do, looking at that deadline on the 17th, which is only less than a week away from us anyway. We can move everything back about a week. You also have to remember that it may not have a whole lot to do with the middle of March, because I've got the week of the 10th there, but it's not unusual sometimes for a board during that first week that we're talking about, the week of the 3rd, that you interview those first rounds in the first 2 or 3 days, and then the board will go at the latter part of the week to bring them back. So that's why I'm asking the board, whenever we block off here, we want to be somewhat flexible. And part of that is that we want to move as quickly as we can on our top candidates. And our goal is not to let the process drive the candidates. That's not what our goal is, to hire the best candidate. And so we may have to move a little quicker than we would like, but that's why I want to have you keep those weeks open. Other than moving those deadlines, I don't see us probably shuffling this much more than a week of giving you your candidates. I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of impact at the end of the process.
Chuck has a question for you.
Sure.
Is there a difference in your fee between the two?
Is there a difference? No,
In your fee between the two issues? Okay.
no.
So,
If you go with A, it's going to put a little more pressure on us, but I'm not going to charge you any more.
Rick?
Well, the difference, though, is there's no expenses to have them to come here to interview the community. So that, in that regard, there's a difference in the cost.
That's it. Well, you're correct about that. Yeah, there would, but it would save some costs for us on the expense, side, to do that. And what we still would do is to put together the flyer and this information. We would draft that, and I would want the board to still approve our flyer.
So we're in a work session, we can't come to final decision in a work session.
Right.
But I guess what I'm looking for from the board is consensus around one, and what I'm hearing is moving with the A, at least initially, if we've got to extend it, as you said, we have some flexibility, but I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to weigh in from the board. Are there any other questions with regard to the timeline or any concerns about going with A as we talk about that? So Gary, I think what we're looking, you have a question?
I have a question about the timeline. It's not a concern.
Go ahead.
Going with A, I just want to understand, because I work and I need to plan my life.
Sure.
Are you saying that if we push this back a week, that we should plan to be very, very busy for a solid week in March, whether that week starts on the 3rd and goes to the 10th, or starts on the 10th and it goes to the 17th? It's going to be a crazy busy week, and maybe we should not work that week?
Well, no, no, I think what we're probably going to do is do most of our interviewing,
At night.
and I'll have to work with you. It depends on the amount of candidates, obviously, that we end up interviewing the first round. But I would say that let's keep those dates open, and we can do a lot of the interviews. And it depends on what the board wants to do. I have a lot of boards that would prefer the first round to maybe interview like a Thursday, Friday, and even on a Saturday because, of work. Again, if we do evening, the evening ones you can do about, the most you can do is about 2 a night. So if you have 5 candidates, let's say 6 candidates, that's probably going to be anywhere from 5 to 6 in that range of candidates for the first round. So you've got a plan. It's going to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours per candidate. Because if we're going to bring them in, we want to find out what we need to find out. It's our interview process, the board, and so we're going to drive it. And so that's what you can plan. We're really looking at approximately 3 days. Now, I've had boards once in a while say, well, let's do 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and that's okay, but I usually tell them not to do that, and after they've done that, they usually told me, we should have listened to you. Because, by the time you go with 4 candidates, that's 8 hours of interview. How can you be really fair to yourselves or the candidate? So it's usually about 2 a day.
So I think what I'm hearing from folks, unless anybody else has something to say on this one, we're looking at A, understanding that the only date that's firm on that left-hand side is tonight's date.
Right. Right, tonight's date, but this gives me, and I'm going to follow up with Rick, I'm going to work these, and it'll probably back it up maybe a week. I'm still going to try to stay on the aggressive timeline. And when's your spring break?
Our spring break's at
22nd.
it's the last full week of March.
22nd, Saturday the 22nd. The reason
Last-
I know this is because I'm supposed to go to Hawaii that day, and I'm hoping this is all done by then.
I'm not going to Hawaii, so we can do whatever. we
Well,
want.
what I was thinking, John can be presenting the candidates along with Sarah, and I'm going to Hawaii.
Or we could just do this in Hawaii. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Hey, oh, that'd
Have
be
your
good.
grandchildren along?
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, John's, he's over there all,
Well, I guess, Gary, what I'd suggest you do is look towards an option A, a tighter timeline, come back with the dates, and we'll work around schedules.
Yeah.
Now, Nancy's schedule is really in flux because she's a midwife, and people got to give babies when they got to give babies, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. So
Right.
don't always think a weekend's going to be okay for our board.
right,
So
right.
Just make sure you
I'm gonna go
understand
ahead and now that I know which option you're gonna go, I'm gonna put some dates in. I'm gonna work with Mary on the full week of March and spring and try to put together some dates I think that will probably work, and then we'll have you adopt the calendar.
So if I could ask board members, as you look at your personal calendars, and I know, Jeff, you've got a lot of work you're doing right now too. If there's something that doesn't work for you in March, I mean, you've got something blocked out like you're going to Hawaii, could you please let Mary know just as soon as possible so that Mary can work with Gary on the calendaring? So if Jeff, you've got a job where you're working a weekend or potentially working that weekend, if you could let Mary know just as soon as possible, that'd be great. And the rest of the board as well. If you've got something, Rick, if you've got to travel for your job, for your consulting job, let Mary know just as soon as we can so we can work that out. That'd be great.
Only got to run a national meeting the week of the 10th, that's all.
That's the type of things we need.
As a comment, though, last time we went through this, we did do it all in evenings during weekdays, so it worked out. It was a lot of evenings, as you've described, but we did stay away from weekends, and it was evenings, not during the normal work hours.
Yeah, I think it'll work, fairly well, and obviously the whole idea is to do this far enough ahead of time, so it'll help you plan too. So, this will work. I'll get started on this, and it's very helpful on that, because that moves down to item 2 of the topics for discussion, and we've already talked about the input process, so we're gonna handle that with your, what you've already put together. And as far as the interview, first round, that's usually with the board. The second round, when you get it to your top couple of candidates, then, at that particular point in time, their names will become, public. Obviously, if you involve any groups, it's gonna become, public anyway. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. I'm not sure that tonight you have to worry about your groups and how that's going to work, but I'm assuming that's how you're going to do it. That once the names come out, you may involve others or not.
I think once, and we talked to the groups that we met with, which includes our employee groups, our business community, our student community, a variety of folks. We had indicated to them that when we got down to our finalists, we would have a community process where folks could ask them questions, have a presentation made by them. I think that's what the board did last time as well. So our community is expecting that.
Okay. Yes.
And obviously, one of the values of that is it protects the names of the candidates up until they are a finalist, so.
Right.
It may
Yeah,
help with the
candidates
quality
are
of
very-
our pool.
Oh, they're, as you know, Rick, they're very skittish about that, candidates do. I mean, let's face it, anybody around this room with any common sense, I mean, the bottom line is if you're working in your current job and you're a current superintendent and your boss knows you're out looking, that's not always a good sign.
Right.
And it's not gonna bother assistant superintendents in large districts or deputies as much as it's going to be a current acting superintendent. And that's the ones that really get concerned, because unfortunately some folks last year interviewed and lost their jobs last year because they were out looking on a couple of searches. So I'm not just saying that, that's the way it works. Now, as far as finalizing the services, of the firm, I think we've already put the contract together. I don't know if there's anything else that you're going to ask of the firm, but right now I'm planning to stay within that contract. If there's something that we're going to add to it, you'll have to tell me down the road on that. Our in-house contact person, we always got to have that. Last time it was Mary in-house, and usually it's the board chair. Once in a while I get a board chair that's doing a lot of traveling, they don't want it. But in this particular case, I've been working with Jim, so it's usually Mary. It's been Mary in the past. I'm not trying to volunteer you, but okay. And usually it's the board chair.
Everybody okay with that? Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. All right, well, that's good.
Holy crap.
Okay, now the flyer, developing the flyer, I'm gonna put that together, and the board's gonna get a chance to look at that, and I do want the board to approve that flyer, not tonight, obviously, but because it's your document, and what that flyer is what's gonna be handed at the national convention. It's gonna go up on the website, people are gonna see it. Obviously, I'm gonna direct them to your website, questions to us. There'll be what I call fast facts about the district. We get a lot of our information off the district's website, but sometimes the website's not always, up to date, and so I want to make sure all the information is accurate. Candidates will do their own homework, no doubt about that, but this will give them, here's what the process is, here's what the timeline is like, and so they'll give them some basic information and how to apply.
Gary, on that point, I just want to make sure of a couple things on that. I want to make sure that Mary has the ability to work with Jay and his staff in communications and with our HR department to make sure that we meet all the requirements of our hiring process that we have in policy, and it has our kind of brand on it.
Sure. And that's fine. That's why I want you to look at it. Well, I've got some samples that I will provide. Technology in our office has come a long ways, you know, like every place. And I have a great staff that does a lot of that. But anything you could provide to us, that would be great. And we'll work together. There's certain things that I want to make sure that's in there as well. So that we'll start working on that. And I'll have a deadline on that flyer too. On that, and I'll work that so that the board can approve that. Okay, the advertisement, yes.
Yes.
So, is this on our agenda for Tuesday night?
No. No. It's not on the agenda for Tuesday night. We won't have that. You mean the approval of a flyer? I don't think we're expecting that quick a turnaround by Tuesday from
No.
Gary and having our folks look at it and then have the board take a look at it. What we may have to do is have a special meeting of the board if it's that tight of a turnaround, see what that timeline looks like and see what we're available to do, but it's not on the agenda for Tuesday.
Okay, because the date that happens to be on,
Remember, the only date that matters
know.
right now is
Yeah,
the
right.
first one.
but they did put the date of
Yeah.
our
Oh,
Tuesday meeting,
that's
that's why I was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
It's
guess
probably
I
by
was-
happenstance.
I was curious about the process when we see it. Will it be a conversation or will it be an up and down kind of,
We'll work with board leadership on
okay,
the best way to get that in front of you and get your consensus and or approval, whichever
okay.
Yeah.
works best.
That'll work. Approval of advertisement. I've put together approval of the advertisement on that, and if you can't take action, I want to at least have a discussion with the board on why I'm recommending these places to advertise. Most of them are free, and most boards like free.
Sure.
So I don't think there'll be a problem with the free, but there is a few spots to spend some dollars, you know, on this. And okay, the first recommend publication, professional publication, that's American Association of School Administrators. Obviously, that's the professional organization. That's one of the conferences I'm going to be at, you know, so we'll be talking to quite a few folks. It'll be interesting in that conference anyway because it's never been in Nashville. You know, a lot of these circuits, you know, go from, they either have them in, you know, San Diego, they have them in San Francisco, other places, you know, around the country, but they've never had it in Nashville. I think they'll have a pretty good turnout just because a lot of folks have never been to Nashville. You know, so, but anyway, we're recommending, you know, for this to run 30 days. Now, there is a 60-day period we could run, but I think once we get it out there, we can run it 30 days. And for 30 days, it's $385. And that goes out to all those folks across the country. And that's not only superintendents, it's assistant superintendents as well that are out there that belong to this, as well as other administrators. Education Week, most of you are probably familiar with that. That's the #1 read publication. It's also very expensive, but at this particular point in time, in my lifetime anyway, it's the only publication that doesn't have a lot of competition. And but it's well read. It's on and it's on their website. I'm saying that right now that we're looking to run it at least 3 to 4 times. Now I could probably look at that depending on what that timeline runs. What this has on there, you can see that from the 5th through the 22nd, and we may chop one of those off, that we've got it running out to 335.90, and then and the website there.
And I notice you don't have recommend behind that one, but you are recommending that one, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think we've gotta do that one. It's easy for me to spend $385, but it's a little more on the others. However, this is the only really publication that's gonna cost you much money.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. But if you're not in there, it really appears that you're not running any kind of a regional or national search. And your best recruiting of getting candidates is going to be our website and our firm. But you've also, when I say our firm, our associates recruiting candidates. But you've got to be out there. And it's like any time you're advertising, you advertise in one place, you advertise another place. Sometimes the candidates see it, it spurs them on a little bit. So I think we need to take a look at it. Anything that's kind of, you see free under the next number of these, except for LinkedIn websites, 195, that's out there now. We're getting some pretty good response, particularly those people that are really from a technology standpoint. Our firm is obviously free. All these are all free until you get down to Education America Network. And then, of course, your Oregon Administrators and School Boards Association, any publication that they might be able to help us, that would be free. Your other options, I'm only recommending that you utilize the free ones. Because any of those organizations, whether it's NAPSI, now ALIS is free. That's the Latino, group. They're free. The Hispanic Outlook one, that's fairly expensive. The Women in Higher Ed and the Chronicle of Higher Ed. All those folks that might be reading that will be reading the other publications anyway. So I wouldn't have you spend any money other than above the line.
So, Gary, I want to make sure, one of the things that we had talked about, especially to our community and this board was concerned about, is that we get a good cross-section of ethnic candidates as well as other types of candidates. And I see that the ALIS is free, but the National Alliance of Black School Educators does cost. And you're saying that candidates that may read those periodicals would also be looking at the other ones, so we're not going to limit our pool. I want to make sure we're not going to limit our pool.
I don't think, if you want to do NAPSI, you could, but if ALIS had $1 on it, other than being free, I would say not to use that one either, because I believe all the candidates will be reading the line above anyway. And I have a number of associates or members of NAPSI anyway, that's part of that organization, as well as ALIS. In fact, 3 of my associates in ALIS are the founders of that organization.
So what I'm hearing, and again, we're in a work session, so we can't officially
Right.
take, but we're looking for consensus, is that you're recommending the AASA and Education Weekly, and that all the other ones that are free, obviously we run those up right away and put it on our website as well. But with regard to cost, you're just recommending the AASA and Education Week?
Well, right now, yeah. Well, there is a couple others. That's
Oh, and
under
LinkedIn, I'm sorry.
There's a couple other under that line that I think doesn't cost you a whole lot of money, but again, exposure is a LinkedIn. It's $195, and the other one's $199. It's $400.
The Education American Network?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm saying anything above that line. If you did want to look at NAPSI, you certainly can, but I know it's only $250, but I'm not sure you're gonna get much for that.
Board?
If you want to spend it, you can.
I'm good above the line.
Okay.
Above the line.
Okay.
All right, that takes care of that, and the next item is if there's any special certifications, and by that I mean if you.
We want them to walk on water.
Okay, I'll put that one there. No, The only reason I bring that up, and I'm, and sometimes I think, well, maybe I'll take that line off there, but the reason why, once in a while I get some board will say, hey, look, we want somebody that's gotta have a PhD degree. I mean, obviously, they gotta be able to be certified, you know, in this, you know, and for this particular type position. But when it comes to the doctorate kind of thing, I always tell boards, don't limit yourself, because what has to happen is, if you're interested in a true educator, let's say they're working on their doctorate, they don't quite have it, they're one course away. We're gonna get a ton of questions, does that eliminate them? You know, that sort of thing.
I think the only concern we've mentioned, at least in our criteria, is that they have the ability to be licensed under TSPC to be a superintendent in the state.
Yeah. Okay?
And I actually called, I wanted to know more about non-traditional candidates, so I actually called TSBC and asked the question. And basically, if we think they're employable as a superintendent here, they can license them.
They just gotta go through a certain, yeah, they gotta do the Oregon school law and the Oregon school funding course and some other stuff, but yeah.
But they'll give them the emergency license
Right.
right out the door.
Yep.
Yeah, emergency or temporary, in some states they call them.
Yeah,
You know, in some cases, you may have what I call, and I told you this during the presentation, you may have a hybrid candidate. You know, somebody that would come from a non-traditional background, but have gone back into education. But again, those people would still have to get licensed.
sure.
Yeah, and as I say, according to the director of TSBC, that's not a problem.
Yeah. And more and more states are moving to that. And the reason why they're moving to that is because of the shallow pools across the country. Because this is a very difficult job. And, you know, the superintendent's position, running a large business, a lot of dollars involved, and quite frankly, a lot of pressure to the job to do more with less, and that's why a lot of folks are not going into the profession. And so that's another reason why you're getting a lot of non-traditional licensures, and those sort of things are opening up.
And on number 8, I'm gonna look to Mary, who do we send the invoices to?
That's
Mary?
that's my business people here. So.
Okay, send
Yeah.
it to Mary.
Okay, Mary, and Mary's gonna pay it, and out of her, okay.
We
So moved?
we have we have an agenda item coming up at our school board meeting for funds for this, so.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. And Mary, it's not coming out of your personal account, so, okay. Okay, the last item, which is a very important item to the firm as well as the board, is salary. Yeah. I don't have one there.
You had one earlier,
All
but
right,
here's,
must be my briefcase, sorry.
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab them over here.
Okay. As I told the board in the interview, I would provide you some general information regarding salary, all right? And I tried to put some Oregon in, and the reason why, the 2012-13, these are the base salaries. 13 and 14, those that I knew for sure, I could put in there, and then I build a 3% in. You remember? And I tried to do that with everybody. Our market is 14, 15. That's the market that we're recruiting, right? That's the market. Trying to get salary information with from administrators across the country is extremely difficult. In fact, I get AASA and other organizations call me and ask me what the going rate is out there, because there's so many things that go into salary. Candidates look at what the base salary is, and that's where they're looking at. Tax shelter annuities are in a lot of contracts. I look at that as salary. All it is deferred compensation. You know, that's, you know, whenever you're gonna pay taxes on it, but you are paying for it. I'm a much more transparent person when it comes to salary, because once in a while when somebody say, well, I need a tax shelter annuity, we'll take it out of salary, or once in a while the board feels like they have to negotiate that, down the road in other contracts. But when you in this business, you can't put the word competitive. Number one, I don't know what that means. I don't know what the definition of it is, and who's going to apply for the job if they don't know what the salary is anyway, especially if they're in good shape, So you got to have a salary number. I don't like to use ranges because my experience has been when you got a bottom and you got a maximum, everybody wants to be at the maximum anyway. And if somebody falls a couple $1,000s outside that range, they're going to apply because they feel this is what it's boxed in. So I like to put a salary, what I think is competitive in the market, in the range of whatever that number is. And then I like to put plus a comprehensive benefit package. That's whatever vacation or whatever you work out with any candidate negotiated. But I think it's important for the board to put another line in there that the final salary will be determined based on the candidate's experience and meeting board criteria. Because if you hire, obviously, someone that might be a deputy or somebody maybe from a smaller district or whatever, they may not quite have the experience. Have I had boards go down a little bit? The answer is yes. It's easy because you got that qualifier in there. Have I had boards go up a little bit more because they got maybe a rock star, they figure that they may have to budget a little bit more? Yes. Candidates normally do not look at they're going to get another 30 or 40,000 on top of what that base salary today in the education circle. What they do look like,
Could you say that again?
they do not look at they're going to get another $30,000 or $40,000 base salary on top of the salary that we negotiate. That we advertise. They may look a little room to move, but not that kind of a big jump. Because one of the reasons why we get a lot of candidates for our jobs, and the last 3 I've just had, just closing 3 jobs. No, we're closing 4. The boards were stunned with the amount of candidates we were able to get them. Part of that is recruiting and also being able to have a competitive salary. You get what you pay for. And so I think it's really critical for the board to put a competitive salary out there in the market. Now, some salaries you're going to see low in certain places, but that's because maybe that candidate's been there for a long time, they've got minimum raises, or their salary's been frozen. But the market is what we have to look at. You may not have to pay a candidate whatever we're putting out there, but you need to give yourself an opportunity to look at them. And so if you don't have a salary in a competitive market, you as a board will always decide, are they worth $200 or whatever $1,000 you're going to look at. But you've got to give yourself an opportunity. And you're going to be competing with a lot of other places, around, even in here in Oregon, that some of the salaries are raised, are out there a little bit. And I was at, what? Lake Oswego, you're talking, just a small district, and they're gonna be at 185, might go 190 or higher, and,
Costs more to live there.
yeah, well, yeah. Medford, though, I was just there, and they're at 200,000. And that's the southern part. So, they're out there. And by the way, I understand the cost of living and all those things. It's cheap to live in Iowa too, but it's hard to recruit sometimes in Iowa, so that's out there too. And a loaf of bread, is not that much difference in one part of the country than another. The bigger thing is housing. That's the biggest thing. And you have to look at wherever you're at on the salary, that person, we're not looking for people that are running away from the posse, so to speak. We're looking for people that are doing a good job, and they've got to be able to say, is it worthwhile for me to move to that position? And with the housing market where it's at, it has hurt our business a little bit because a lot of people may be underwater, and even though they want to apply for the job, they can't apply for the job. So that's a little bit of the background.
So, Gary, can I interrupt us right there
Sure.
for a second? Mary, can you remind us what we were at with Sandy?
198.3,
One.
something like that.
And then we were also making an annual contribution into a 401K. What was that annual? 10?
10,000.
10,000.
That had been adjusted for inflation.
Sure, yeah. And on top of that, everybody's got to realize we've also got PERS costs and health insurance costs. And what's our annual budget for general fund? It's like 323 million, something like that for just general fund. I think our overall amount was higher than that, but the
full
general
budget's
fund
just
budget.
under, half of 500 million.
So just some of my thoughts on this, and then I want to hear from other board members, and I want you to weigh in. And I also, Paula, if you want to weigh in on this one too, because you've been a superintendent, been out there and know what we're looking for. You've got the experience. You know, when you look at our district, we have a $323 million general fund budget. We run either the second or third largest employee group in the city. State's obviously the first, the hospital's either second or third, or we're either second or third. We run the largest, probably behind the state, facilities in the city as well. We have 67 schools plus other support auxiliary facilities. We run the largest transportation operation in the city. We run the largest food program operation in the city. I think when we're trying to recruit somebody to be a CEO of a budget of that much and what we're doing, the second largest school district in the state, I know Portland, and I know Carol Smith, the superintendent, she's been there a while. I mean, if Portland was gonna have to recruit to get somebody there, they're gonna have to go probably $100,000 more than what her base salary is for 14-15.
Yes.
I think we need to be realistic. I don't want to cause sticker shock for the community, but I think we've got to recruit a person in here that wants to come here. As Gary said, they're not looking to run from a posse. They're looking to come here and do good things. I think we've got to pay them more than what we were paying Sandy as she headed out the door. Plus, she'd been here 7+ years, and we had adjusted her salary up from the time we hired her, but it was in small increments, and she also took, as the rest of our employees did, took those cuts as well. I don't know what that number is, but I think we've got to be competitive. And I guess I'd like to hear from other board members, and then Paula, if you want to weigh in, I'd like to hear from you as well. Rick, did you have something?
No, it was before you started talking. I
Oh.
don't have it now. I'm okay.
Okay.
I was gonna ask some questions, but I think I got the answers already, so.
What I'd like to ask is, I'd like to ask our consultants here, what's a competitive bid? What's a number that would draw someone to Salem?
I think you gotta be at least 225,000, at least. And just, you can't shoot the messenger here. I'm just trying to provide you, some information up in the Northwest, and even in the Midwest and some out east. I mean, if I really went way out east, those salaries would drive even higher. I've got small districts, or I got 3,000 or 4,000 kids are paying 250,000. 250, and so you're gonna have to, that doesn't mean you're gonna have to pay that. I mean, if you get the right candidate, but you gotta get some bait on the hook to get those folks to take a look at it, because who's gonna, okay, if I'm making $200,000 right now, or 210, do I apply to make 225? Is it worthwhile for me to talk to my sophomore daughter or sophomore son and move for that? And some of these smaller districts, they're paying their people really well to keep them. They're tired of feeding larger districts, and so, and because they become the training ground. And we want to get somebody here that's going to stay for a while, become invested in the community, and not train them for the next job. So I think you got to be at least 225. We discussed that on the way down. The data shows that you ought to at least be there, and quite frankly, if I wanted to maneuver this, I could have made it a lot higher, but I didn't do that. So it's really, when I say that's the minimum, that should be the minimum. Obviously, if you move to 250, or that would be, you get some really, probably crackerjack folks, there, but that's up to, that certainly is up to the board. It's your, I can just tell you what the market is. Market's really tight out there, to get good quality people.
So we'd be comparing the 225 you just said to the ones that are in our furthest right column on your sheet.
Yeah, I mean, and you would be a little bit on that, on the lower side, and I'm not, if I could tell you I get a crackerjack superintendent for 150, I'd say yes, but you can't, I don't think you'd do that. And if you did, they'd be gone in a few years, because what happens is you're not gonna be able to give them the type of raises that they're gonna get by moving.
Rick?
Yeah, Gary, my first reaction to your number was probably the same reaction I had 8 years ago. I don't know what the numbers were, but I seem to remember we did have to go out higher than we had the current superintendent at, and it probably wasn't the same type of increment. And then the number you just gave us, if you look at the sheet, the 225 would have been the base salary Sandy would have got at Seattle if she'd gotten that job. Mm-hmm. And I, for one board member here, would have wanted to offer Sandy 225 to stay here rather than go to Seattle, match that. So I'm starting to have, I'm making my own arguments to myself about the value of 225. So I don't see where we can't not start there from my perspective. It's a tough thing to bite on because it's seems like such a big leap to us that are just everyday human beings. But
I know, and I certainly appreciate that, but it's such a large organization that you're running here, not only in terms of dollar cents, but the product. I mean, all these companies have their own product, but you have the most precious product that you're producing here. That's the future of this country and this state and education, and it's hard to put a price tag on it, but you've got to give this district a chance to bring a top-notch person, here, and it's hard for me to sit here for any board, and say, you got to pay this kind of money to get someone. But if she was here at 208 right now, just salary, you put 3% on that. I mean, and that's not even trying to recruit. The market is out there, and I'm saying 225. And when we say that, I'm trying to be on the low side. Mm-hmm. If you need to move that number, it probably, if you really want to get some folks, you have to have a higher number there. But I'm trying to be somewhat conservative, if that makes any sense.
mm-hmm.
I agree with both of you. I think it needs to be at least that high.
Paula, do you?
I can make a couple comments. There's no doubt that the superintendency is a really challenging job, and I'm dismayed that the pools are limited. And I think they're limited because of the difficulty of the job, the pressures of the job. There are a number of superintendents within the state of Oregon in much smaller districts who are making, I think comparatively speaking, based on enrollment, really excellent salaries. There is no incentive for them to even apply here unless there's some bump, I think, and to make it worthwhile. And I think there are some really incredible leaders in this state and out of state that we could attract. So I would encourage the board to be as competitive as you believe that you can be to attract the highest quality candidate and to keep them here, at least for a period of time, to make sure the district is stable and moving forward. So I would certainly concur that I think that at the minimum, the 225, it should be at least considered by the board as a starting point.
Sorry, Nancy.
I have just questions about process. So if the board says 225, and there are applicants who think they're worth more than that, do they apply and then try to negotiate with us, or do they typically say, or you make 222, why would I?
So we're not,
transfer?
I want to be real clear. We are not making a decision on how much we're going to pay this person that we hire next. We're setting what we would see in an advertisement for salary that could be potentially what we would offer here at Salem-Keizer.
Correct.
All salaries of our final individual are gonna be
negotiated.
subject to negotiation.
Right, I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out how this process works, because I've never been through it.
That's a good question.
And so, is it the sort of thing that people say, you know, that's kind of in my ballpark, but I think with my experience, I'll be able to negotiate it up? Or do people look at the salaries and say, look at that like it's a firm?
They're gonna think that there's not gonna be a whole lot of negotiations in that salary. If I'm making 225,000 or 222,000, you're advertising 225,000, they're gonna probably not apply. Because they're not gonna think that you're gonna be able to go to 250. I mean, you know, they're just not. One thing about superintendents, they're not that good at negotiators when it comes right down to it. I mean, because well, I mean, I mean, I hate to say that, and I see your face is red over there, but that's true. You know, because I said earlier, they look at maybe, if I'm gonna move it, maybe 5, maybe at the max 10, but more likely maybe 5 would be the high point. You know, so I think the salary you put in there is really critical of attracting candidates. Because if I'm making 222 and you advertise in a range of 225 with a final salary and that other, what I said, that gives you a little flexibility, they're gonna say, well, okay, the most they're probably gonna go is 230, and so I'm not gonna apply. It's not worth me. So that's what I keep saying, that should be the minimum. When you ask me if I'm gonna get a Cracker Jack somebody, they're gonna have to be around 250. And then you're gonna get somebody, you know, I look at this a lot like in the Midwest. I have a lot of time trying to recruit people to Iowa, you know, same thing when I'm in Washington, you know, we all live here. I think Iowa's a great place to live, but the sun doesn't shine there all the time. You know, and we have our own weathers. I'm worried about getting back, you know. But you got those things to overcome too. You have all those things, you know, that you have to overcome. And you do have a lot of great things going on. There's no doubt. That will attract some people, but will it attract the people that you need to attract?
So if I, quick back of the napkin calculations here on my iPhone.
Not the napkin.
Currently, when you say we're paying Sandy 208, that includes that $10,000 contribution
Right.
into the deferred comp, because that is salary.
That's- you're paying
out-of-pocket money. We're just not paying all the full boat on it with taxes and everything
Right.
on it.
Right.
And you take us to 225, let's say. That's really only an 8% increase.
I know.
I
Being conservative, when I said 225, I said that's a minimum, and then I also told you where I thought a Cracker Jack ought to be.
Yeah, I guess I mean, it's hard for me to swallow 225, knowing the community and knowing the economy that we've just been through here and what we've asked all of our employees to do across this district. But I want to make sure we get qualified candidates in the door to be our superintendent. So I'm looking, I mean, this was just my number that I was talking about was more in the 235 range. Because that actually gets you that bump up to where, when folks look at Sandy's contract, they're saying she made 208. And I know we could come down from that, but I'm looking around the country right now too, Gary, at what superintendents have been doing. When Sandy announced she was leaving, I said, okay, we better be looking at what we can pay. And I started looking around and touching out to my contacts around the nation, and everybody told me, yeah, you gotta come in above 225.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't disagree. If you look at 235, that's really close, right around the, average. And, if you can't get to 250, and I said 225 is a minimum, at least 235 gives them a chance to say they maybe could get to close to it, maybe
Well,
not.
somebody that's sitting there at 220, if they're gonna go to 225, it's not worth uprooting your
Yeah,
sophomore.
exactly, yeah.
I mean, but if you can say 235, that may be enough to
That may be
uproot.
enough to do that, and depending on how you work the contract, it may be enough to get them through the door. At least we will get their ear, to take a look at it, at 235. Because then if I make it 200 or 210, 235 says, okay, I think that's, in the ballpark. If I'm making 225 and they may say 235, and if a little bump here or there might be enough, we can get a deal done. But,
Plus, they get to work with this wonderful board.
well, I wrote that down as a positive when I said, well,
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, right, nice.
But one of us had to say that. Who said that?
well, 235 makes a whole lot more sense than probably my 225, but I'm just saying that's a bare minimum because of the sticker shock, but you're absolutely correct. It's only an 8% above the market, and she's been here for, some
7.5
time.
years.
Yeah, and,
Chuck, and then Jeff. Chuck, and then Jeff.
yeah.
I just have a philosophical difference on the whole thing about listing a salary. I get what you're saying, but I kind of feel that by sticking a number to it, kind of puts us in a situation where we're kind of limiting ourselves as far as negotiation. We may get a guy or a gal that we really like that we may end up paying $250,000 for if we really want that person. Or we might get somebody we really want that's making, in a comparable district, $180,000 a year, and we can get them for that. So that's where I'm coming from. I recognize that, there might be some advantages to posting a salary, but I also feel like, we just need to advertise, get the very best person possible, and then look and see what their compensation is and what it's gonna take to get them here if we really want them.
I would like to do that in the private industry, and I've done some of those jobs. It's a lot easier to do it that way. But in the public sector, it just doesn't, quite work that way. The problem with the 185, you may get them, but they could do a tremendous job, and you're not going to be able to face that you're going to give them a $30,000 or $40,000 raise next year. That's not going to happen, and you're going to be the training ground, and they're going to move. Because someone like myself is going to come along and say, you can make 240 here, and this job is worth X amount of money no matter what, because it's a large organization. They may be making 185, but this job's worth X amount of money anyway. And
The message we're putting out is that we're going to pay a higher base salary than anybody else in the state of Oregon. We're not saying regardless of their salary, or
Yeah.
regardless of their experience, because we understand we're gonna negotiate that.
yeah,
But that's the message you're sending out, and in this community, that's a tough one.
Jeff?
I was just gonna say pretty much almost the same thing, and just that in Oregon, we're less than that, and I don't know how well this takes into account the average income and the price of the people who are, the average salary of the people in the district. And I'm not saying that to say that they're not worth
Sure.
that much, but I don't know that we want to overshoot the highest in the state by that far. And I know that if we wanted to get a top candidate from anywhere in the United States, that we would need to, but I really think that I'd be pretty content with a little bit smaller field of Northwest candidates. If that's all it would take it for 200,000, then, or 210,000 or whatever, then I'd be up for looking at a smaller group. To me, I don't feel like I think there's enough qualified people without having to try to compete with Sacramento or San Francisco or Sacramento or some of those other places, Seattle. And I don't.
well, we got your last.
I don't feel like I have to go that high.
Well, and I appreciate that. And, we were looking at a national search, and the Northwest is like, it's not the easy place to recruit. And as I told you, in the Midwest, there's certain places. But your last superintendent, we had to go out and recruit her. She was in Denver, she was in Tennessee, and she wasn't even looking at the Northwest, not even looking at the Northwest. I can't even, without divulging, I can't even tell you how many conversations I had, to take a look at. But we got the salary was attractive to us, the size of the district, all the selling points that we were asking you folks tonight to help us, sell the district, is that she applied. And we had some other folks. I know people don't want to say, well, we don't want somebody because just coming for the money, but money does come into it when they have to make a change.
So I had a question, Gary. You said that Medford, they're just doing theirs and it was 200,000?
200,000. We're paying our superintendent, I think.
And they're what,
100
about 10,000
Yes.
in size?
Yeah, they were paying the
we're-
superintendent 134.
We're almost 40,000, so they're,
Over 40,000.
we're just a little bit bigger than Beaverton. We're like 700, 800 more kids than Beaverton, so we're close to 40,000 in ADM, not ADMW, ADM, just number of bodies. And if Medford's paying 200,000 with 10,000 students, I think it's really gonna be hard to recruit folks if we don't have that number somewhere between 225 and 235. That's my only point. But Chuck, you had a comment, and then Rick.
My comment again is only, I certainly feel like we may have to pay $240,000. Philosophically, I just think that we should be handling it a different way, and I'm certainly not going to get in the way of a thumbs up to move forward on whatever the majority of us want to do. But I think that we can get good candidates to the
Can I
second
ask-
largest school district
Can
in
I
the
ask
state.
Chuck a clarifier?
Yeah.
So when you say you'd like to handle it another way, what you'd like to do is put something out there with no number on it?
Yeah. Yeah. The old, depending on experience
Yeah.
and other things, that go along with it.
Commensurate with.
Commensurate with experience. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, what would you have us tell them when they apply for the job? And when they say, the reason why, I used to advertise that way, and I'm telling you, it didn't work. And the reason why, because most of these people they're gonna say, well, I'm not gonna go through all the process to apply, put myself in exposure and getting all these letters of reference if I don't even know what this thing's gonna apply. And I can't say, well, trust me, or, kiss and a promise that, this will work out. It just doesn't work that way. People are going to wanna know at least, and I certainly don't want to, or have my associates out to recruiting and just trying to put a definition to what competitive or what you folks are thinking about, because we can't put our reputation where they think that we bring them in and say, oh, we're not going to pay that, then, they're going to feel like we're lying to them. And I just don't want to do that.
Rick?
I'll ask my other question, but to your point, what would you say to someone if we went with posting, commensurate, pay commensurate with experience? I'd say give them a copy of this tape, and they'd have a good idea where we would end up as far as pay goes.
And to me, what that means is that
That's a
if you're
new
making
recruiting technique, but I'll think about it.
to me, what that means is if you're making $260,000 a year now, and you're gonna be our candidate, we're probably not gonna be offering or negotiating a salary less than that, that's all I'm saying.
On the comparison to Medford, the size of the district's one thing, but the point that Gary made about the steep rise in the salary, that's almost a 50% increase, or maybe a 40% increase in the pay for that position. That's a significant thing that they chose to do that, to attract the right type of candidates, so.
Because the market, the person been there 10 years, and when you're there, you just don't rise, the salaries just don't go. Everybody understands you got to get it going in because, usually with public employees, no matter from the top to the bottom, the raises are very, very small. That's why, and in this business, in order to get a bigger salary, they have to move. And then they go out into the market. This is what I call a market adjustment after 7 years. I mean, that's what it is. It's a market adjustment that's out there, and the pool of candidates that you have to choose from is smaller. People just don't like this job anymore. I mean, it is a tough job, like she said. The challenges are just tremendous. We don't get the principals going into superintendents or assistant superintendents, then moving up the ladder. No, they're just, they're not. They just don't want to go into, that's why the pool's smaller.
Nancy?
So I understand what Chuck is saying, and I think what he was saying was more of a philosophical statement, that that's what he would be most comfortable with, but that's not the world we're living in, so it's not a possibility. At least that's what I thought he was saying. I also want to comment on what Jeff said. I would be very uncomfortable if we set a salary so low that we only attracted Oregon. We can't, the salaries in Washington are significantly higher, so we're not looking at Northwest, we're looking just at Oregon with salaries. And I don't think that we can guarantee the students of this district that we're doing the best we can for every one of them if we're limiting our search to just Oregon. So I think I would agree that we need to go somewhere.
So I think in order to wrap this discussion up, I think what I'm hearing from the board, I understand Chuck's point. I wish we could live in that role too. As I advertise jobs where I work, I'd like to be able to put commensurate with experience. The problem is you don't get folks wanting to apply for a job if they don't know what that salary is. And Jeff, I understand your concern, and my concern too is we've got to be good stewards of the public tax dollars that the voters entrust us with. But we also have to be able to assure our folks that we're going to get the best superintendent we possibly can. And hearing from our experts here and hearing from Dr. Radich on her views on getting a superintendent in the door, I guess just looking around the table, I like to try to get consensus. Obviously, we're going to negotiate with whoever we're going to negotiate with on whatever salary we can get them in the door for. And my preference is we try to put as much money into the classroom as we possibly can, but we've got to pay our CEO what's going to be commensurate to bring a CEO into this organization. For lack of a better term, your superintendent's your CEO. And we'll be the folks that are going to be held accountable for that. But I guess I'd look advertising, you threw out 225, I threw out 235. I'm willing to split the difference and call it 230 and see if we can get consensus around the table to move that forward or stay at the 225. It's really up to the board, but 230, 235. Rick?
I would use your number, Jim.
Okay.
I'd go with 235.
I haven't weighed in yet. I'll just say what I'm thinking. I fully understand the market. What I would love is to go out there and find somebody that so thinks that Salem-Keizer would be the greatest place for them to go work, sees what we're doing here, and gets so excited about coming and working with us that they'd work for $50,000. But that's really what's going on in my head. But the reality that I'm looking at is that we're talking about the difference between the two numbers. We're looking at current pay, and what we're looking at is, I just did the calculation, it's just a tad over 0.07% of the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to impact our ability to do other things by making this shift. And so I tend to support the 235.
I agree.
Okay. I think we have consensus around the table. Obviously, that's up to negotiation, and just so everybody understands, everybody understands that's here and in TV land out there, it's going to be subject to negotiation and a public vote by this board on what our final contract number will be with our employee. Gary, do you guys have anything else? Anything?
No, I just want to thank the board for your time, and we're going to go out and recruit.
Anything else from board members? Mary, do you have anything you need from us? Remember, please, if you do have calendar issues coming up in March, if you could get those to Mary as soon as you can. If you don't know and there's a possibility, even get that to her. Paula, do you have anything else for us?
Thank you.
If not, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.